What's up, everybody? This is Roberto Lorenzo Ferguson, aka Robert Ferguson. I am your nutritionist. I'm a guy who shares because I care, and today is no different. We are going to talk about something that needs to be talked about. And when I say we, I'm talking about my partner in crime, if you will, the one and only, we call her Hammer Girl, that is Lisa Marie. I'm going to bring her on in just a second, but to set the stage, let me just encourage you guys to like, subscribe, comment when you can. Let us know who you are, where you're coming from. And if you're in any of our private groups, make sure you do a dash at the end of your statement or your question and put your name so I can actually know who it is. You know what I'm saying? Okay, without further delay, let me bring on the one and only. Yes, Hammer Girl, you get out of line, she will put you back in line. What's up, Hammer Girl?
What's going on, Robert? How are you?
Oh, what a day it has been. Let me tell you. It's been a good day, Lisa. How are you?
It has. It's been a nice day today.
All right. Well, as you guys get to hear us have this conversation and we get into the nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about, if you want to contact Lisa Marie, her info is below. You can go to her website. You can reach out to her. You can do the same thing to me. We are here because we really are on a mission to make a difference in the lives of people. Wouldn't you agree, Lisa?
I agree, 100%.
Yes. And it's been so interesting. But anyway, what's new with Lisa? So tell us what's new with you. Anything you want to talk about? Any updates? I mean, you're helping people. You got your son. You're making a difference. You're having fun, and you're always spreading the word. And Lisa, I know you're always discovering stuff that is always a surprise to me, and I appreciate having you in my life. But give us an update. What's up? What's new with Lisa?
What's going on? Nothing. I don't, just the same thing. I did enjoy the day today. We're having nice weather finally here in New York.
All right. Well, you got something positive going on in New York.
Absolutely. I know. There's a lot going on here. I was looking at some videos. I see there's a lot going down at the mayor's office. We have Trump in town. It's kind of interesting.
Boy, and then you still, I heard that there's quite a few people who are immigrants that were living in hotels, and now they're wanting to move them out of hotels, and they're saying, hey, we don't want to go into that kind of facility. We're used to this kind of living. Is that true?
That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that they want the hotels. They don't want the uh what do you call it? Oh
I
my
guess the whole setup, like where they put them in high schools and gymnasiums and all these different facilities. I'm sure. I mean, that's not the same as having a nice,
A
clean.
nice clean hotel, huh? But we
Exactly.
can't we got so many veterans on the street in New York and but there's I don't know, that whole thing, Robert, gets me. Like, and when are we gonna stand up and fight for our people? And these people are, in there demanding um fancy hotels.
Well, hey, I mean, I'll be an immigrant if they let me have they give me a
Well,
hotel
you're
room.
giving them like a whole bunch of money and everything else too, right? What craziness.
It is so crazy. And you know what was continues to be crazy? Like every Tuesday I get with my family and we go online. We do like something like this, like a Zoom. And it's great because every Tuesday it gives me a chance to see my mom and to see my family members. And then we have other people involved and it's really great. I love every second of it. Um, and they really help me stay grounded because like today I was talking to them about the importance of how insulin circulating in the body blocks the fat cell from being able to release fat and for it to be burned.
Hmm.
And I had to do it in a way where my goal is for everybody to get it. And I felt like they really got it today. And it helped them really, it put them in a position where they were like, okay, that makes more sense. But then my mom called me out because she pays attention. So if you go back in time, Lisa, and if you read my first books, the first infomercial I put out, I had people eating every 2 to 3 hours.
Yep.
So you're eating 3 meals a day, and in between that, you were eating a snack,
Right.
and that was the methodology. And so when I told my mom, let's keep it to 3 meals. Let's snack maybe once a day. You don't have to, but 3 meals.
Mhm.
And I said, let's space it out. So my mom was like, well, hold up. And everybody was like, yeah. My mom's name is Brenda. She goes, well, in your old program, you had me eating every 2 to 3 hours. Right? And I said, Mom, I've eaten crow on that. If you do not have insulin resistance, some people can do really well with that. Like
Mm.
a lot of people can. And many people who are hearing my voice right now, they lost weight eating every 2 to 3 hours. So you can do it because our focus was at the time primarily on keeping your blood sugar levels from going too high and
Mhm.
dropping too low. And there's a part of me today that believes that when you're doing that, yes, you may lose weight, but you also may be planting the seed or establish yourself to eventually become insulin
It's
resistant.
resistant. Yeah.
So I apologize for that all the time. And I get it. Now we
Mhm.
helped a lot of people during that time. And again, the only reason why I shifted from that to where it is today was I was doing a 20 city tour. I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but I would meet these women. They would come up to me at the end of the seminar when we took a break, and they would say, "Hey, Robert, I'm doing everything right. I'm doing, my friend is losing weight, but I am not losing weight." And the first time I heard that, I just thought, okay, they're just saying that they're not really following the program.
Mhm.
And then I would go to the next city, next state, and I would have someone else and I started noticing these people all kind of had similar shapes and they are around similar ages. And after a while, I was like, okay, it's time for me to go do my due diligence. And
Mhm.
so in 2010, I started doing these deep dives, and it was very clear to me that people had insulin resistance, and eating every 2 to 3 hours for those people would not be a wise thing to do.
Mhm.
And so at that point, I came up with a way of this thing. I called it the carb threshold, it was like carb stepping, because we
Mhm.
didn't have a way of quickly knowing what a person's carb threshold score was. And so that was very tedious. I did a whole infomercial. We spent over $1 million putting this thing out there. And some people who are hearing me right now, they're probably going, I remember carb stepping. And eventually, my ex-wife actually made a comment to me one day. She goes, this is really good what you're doing, but it'd be great if there was a way that you could remove any bias. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, well, what if there was like a formula of taking information from a person, maybe even blood work, and then you could quickly figure out what their threshold was? Then that would make even more sense and you could be quick.
Mhm.
And she was right. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how it all started.
Wow.
So I have to. She asked a question. She made a statement, and the ex-wife actually helped me, and I'm forever thankful for that because it helped me take it to the next level. And that's when we came up with get the fasting glucose, get the body fat percentage. We created an algorithm, and then boom, we were able to identify what level of insulin resistance a person had,
Mhm.
and that's how we are where we are. Yay!
That's awesome. That's awesome. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, I should share it more.
You should.
Because it was a game changer. And then that was around 2011. I got it figured out by about 2014, and now it's been 10 years since then, and here we are.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
yep, that's the story. Not many people know that, but it's one of those things, right? You got to go through the ups and downs. You got to keep questioning yourself, and even to this day, Lisa, and I know you know this about me, but I question myself, and I like to be surrounded by people like you who are constantly asking questions and constantly doing your own research. And so, like, it's a blessing for me to have coaches and friends that I've connected with like you, because we're all wanting to like question, and we all want to keep, you know what I mean? Like thriving to figure out, is there a better way?
Right.
And
And
if
that
there is, we'll find it.
Right. That's the real science, right? Is that you have to question, you have to observe, and then, you either, stay the course or, things come in, new things come into light. It's revolving.
And never settle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, today is that day because we're going to take a step. I saw a program, someone put together a really good video, and they looked at how do we get to where we are as far as the challenges with being overweight, the challenges with every year people are more sick. There's more autoimmune challenges that keep coming up. And so I like this video because I feel like let's play it. Then we can pause it and you and I can talk about it. Those of you who are listening live, you can throw in any questions. But there's a lot to be learned from the video that I'm going to play. And I guess instead of just talking about it, I should just probably hit play, right?
Yeah, let's see it.
All right, you guys. So we're going to play a little bit of video. And the goal here is to understand the U.S. dietary guidelines, the pyramid. Because when you look at the data, right, if you go back, there's two big moments that I've seen when you look at the history of health, weight loss, weight gain, 1960 and 1980. Right? So like my point, for instance, in 1979, not one adult was diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver. Today, 50% of adults, men and women, are living with non-alcoholic fatty liver. So what took place from 1980 to now? And what took place in 1960 that created these shifts that set us up for what took place in 1980. And a lot of that history is why we're in the place that we're in today. So, as the saying goes, if you don't know your history, what has taken place in the past is very likely to repeat itself. So without further delay, let's tune in.
Big here, and it affects all of you. It's the food pyramid, which turns out is a pyramid scheme.
The average American now carries 23 extra pounds.
Heart disease and stroke will claim the lives of 460,000 American women.
Prostate cancer is now the most common cancer in American men.
Diabetes.
Life-threatening diabetes.
Since 1975, the percentage of Americans who have type 2 diabetes has more than tripled.
Clearly, the Western diet is taking a toll. This should serve as a wake-up call. We have a growing problem, and the ones who are growing are us.
The food pyramid is one giant scam. See, back in the 1970s, before the food pyramid was a thing, the USDA needed to create the next food guide to release to the population. So they hired a few experts. But unfortunately, one of those experts they hired was a woman named Louise Light. And Louise Light wasn't bought out by Big Food. She actually cared about nutrition, and she would soon pose a problem. Louise Light went right to work, proposing a new food guide that was actually pretty decent. It included 5 to 9 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables each day. It encouraged protein foods like meat and eggs. Instead of shaming natural fats, it encouraged things like 4 daily tablespoons of cold-pressed fats like olive oil, while really limiting sugar and refined grains like processed bread, crackers, and cutting out candy and junk food altogether. So, as you can see, all pretty reasonable stuff. Louise Light and her team proudly submitted the new guidelines to the USDA, but they rejected it. And instead, they released a modified version that was so perverted, it was almost unrecognizable from the original. Instead of just 2 to 3 servings of grains a day, now it told Americans to eat 6 to 11 servings. That's up to 13 slices of bread a day, or almost an entire box of sugary cereal. And yes, these recommended grains included incredibly healthy American sliced bread, crackers, and of course, we can't forget about the breakfast of champions, cereal.
Food pyramid that we were taught in school about said the recommended amount for bread, cereals, and grains was 6 to 11 servings a day. 11 bowls of cereal a day. 11 slices of bread a day.
While meat, fruit, and vegetables, those disgusting foods now only made up a tiny portion of the recommended diet. And the public just blindly followed along. This food pyramid was officially introduced to the masses in 1980. It was supposed to be healthier, and yet obesity kept skyrocketing.
Look what's happened since 1980. Rise in U.S. overweight obesity coincides with the beginning of the dietary guidelines.
In following the food pyramid, a 15-year-old girl can eat a daily menu consisting of a bowl of Lucky Charms with low-fat milk and a glass of orange juice from concentrate for breakfast, cheese-flavored crackers for a morning snack, a cheeseburger on a whole grain bun with French fries and a Coke for lunch, chocolate pudding and grapes for an afternoon snack, and chicken nuggets with a biscuit and canned green beans for dinner.
Okay, let's take a break. Okay, every once in a while, you guys, when I pause it, it's because we don't want to run into any copyright problems. So if you pause and we talk about it, then it's allowed on YouTube and some of the other spots. But I felt that was a good time to take a break. Because so what comes to mind, at least if you're sitting at home, because a lot of people would love to be sitting with both of us watching these kind of programs and see what we would be saying based on watching these programs.
So I was like, man, look at all those fast carbs, right? Like, I'm like, Lucky Charms. I mean, and that's what they're recommending now too, right? Like, Lucky Charms is like the healthy breakfast. Isn't that what they're saying now?
Oh yeah, it's still recommended, but
Mhm.
but you're right. Like knowing what we know, you see fast carb. It's like according to the U.S. dietary guidelines. I remember watching Dr. Oz on one of his shows, and he said, and I remember it pretty good, so I'm pretty accurate on this. He said, "Okay, you wake up in the morning, and here's an example of a good breakfast. You want to have some cereal, fast carb. You want to add milk to it, fast carb. Then you want to have a banana,
Fast carb.
fast carb, with some orange juice, fast carb. Half an English muffin, fast carb."
It's like giving me a heart attack.
And then they wonder why every year we continue to gain weight. Every year we become more and more sick, like every year.
It's
And
so
these
crazy.
are still the guidelines like right now. And with the new food compass is even worse.
Yeah. It's like, like even with my son, when I always ask him, like, when he's at his dad's house, I'm like, so what did you have for breakfast? And he'll be like, cereal. And I'm like, what protein? Where was your protein? Like, what protein did you have with that? Now I know he can have cereal, but I don't like that every day, And I'm like, where's your fruit? Where's your slow carbs? I always, and he knows it.
Now, what is it like? Could you go to the dad and say, "Hey, or is that speaking to deaf ears?"
No, his dad is actually very good, and we have a very good co-parenting relationship. So, I think, I was actually thinking about this and kind of giving, my little principle, with proteins, fast carbs, slow carbs, and showing him, I haven't taken the time, I guess. I don't like to interfere too much, but when it's like cereal every day, like it starts to give me like that, like, so
Oh, I get it. I grew up sugar bears. I mean, do they still have sugar bears in the grocery stores?
I don't know. We don't even go to this. I don't even have cereal in my house.
No, I don't either. Well, it's funny. I was talking to my daughter just the other day, or my little Faith, and we were driving, and I said, "Hey, what did you have for breakfast?" And she goes, "I had cereal." I go, "What? What kind of cereal?" Because I never buy them cereal. And at one point, I used to make them like Malta meal, and we would have different hot cereals in the morning, but they never got into that. Now, I did introduce them to Fruit Loops
Hmm.
because when I think of my childhood, Fruit Loops was something that reminds me of my childhood.
Yeah, and Golden Grams, that was
Oh
like
yeah.
another one. But I loved
Mm.
when they were soggy. Like I didn't like them crunchy. I liked them soggy and soaked with the milk.
Oh man, I'm telling you, like I have moments, and I've shared that I actually have done videos where I'll go buy Fruit Loops, and I'll have a moment because more of the childhood memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But when I buy, so for those of you who are giving me a hard time about Fruit Loops, whenever I buy it, which is probably once every couple years, maybe, I usually will get like a Premier protein shake or an Atkins protein shake, like a liquid one. And instead of using regular milk, I would use that. And I've had many clients do that, and it actually helps keep the blood sugar levels from spiking too high.
Yeah.
But it's still cereal. It's not my go-to. I'm just letting you guys know that, hey, I'm human. I'm like everybody else. I have childhood memories, and sometimes, you know, depending on where I'm at, I will go and eat something that is not something I would recommend to others. But it's my childhood moment, so let me have it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, let's keep it going. You ready?
Yep.
Fat ice cream for dessert.
Why? Because the food pyramid was never about your health. No. According to Louise Light, the food pyramid was sold to the highest bidder, and that highest bidder was the grain industry.
Our federal dietary guidelines, the official government advice for how we should all eat to stay healthy, tell us to limit saturated fat to just a couple of bites a day and make carbohydrates more than half our daily calories.
The first dietary guidelines recommended 50 to 55% of your calories are supposed to come from carbohydrates, mostly grains.
Since the 1960s, the American Heart Association has been saying saturated fat is detrimental to cardiovascular health. You need to get it out of the diet.
I was astonished to find that there simply was no evidence.
What is the evidence? A big, big zero.
Many people associated with the American Heart Association had been advising people to consume margarine that was loaded with trans fat, although lower in saturated fat. As it turns out, people who had more trans fat in their diet had higher rates of heart disease and diabetes.
What we told people is to get off a possibly unhealthy fat called saturated fat and replace it with a fat that we subsequently learned actually does give you heart attacks.
Every 5 years, the government reformulates the dietary guidelines for Americans. And we looked at the panel that pulled it together, 11 people. 6 of the 11 had financial relationships with the food industry. When a kid is pulling his tray down the school lunch line, see federal policies in action. There are burgers topped with cheese, the milk is heavily subsidized, but the vegetables and fruits a little bit harder to find. And this is because the government contracts are going to particularly the meat producers and other producers as well. It has nothing to do with the health of the children. It has all to do with the financial health of the big agribusiness entities.
Welcome to Evil Food Supply, and this is the giant scam that is the food pyramid.
Watching the footage of the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, I was struck by how not fat everyone in the crowd was. We looked like a completely different race of people.
I think the food pyramid is great if you're standing on your head, because you need to turn that pyramid upside down.
You can't be serious. That would put butter and fat at the top of the damn food pyramid!
Nutrition is stabilizing.
Okay. This is a great video.
It is.
You know, like Louise Lice. So the lady that they recommend, I knew she was a registered dietitian. And she literally, the way we actually do fat burning meals with Diet Free Life, Louise Light would have said, that's a good program. If you go back in the 60s and got with the founder of Weight Watchers, she would say, that's a good program. Because they were more in line with us. And if you look back, that's where people were getting better results.
Right.
But today, you have, as they mentioned in these videos, you can see where the lobbyists get in there, right? The Kellogg's and the General Mills, they have people that are paid big bucks to make sure that politicians don't change things that would create interference with the promotion of the way the pyramid is set up today.
Yeah. Well, even like today, because now even like with all of the grains, like, you know, how they were saying, you know, it went to the highest bidder, right? The grain industry. And then now you have Monsanto in there. So you've got, you know, I mean, all those pesticides and everything and all those grains. It's just a disaster.
It's such a disaster. It's so crazy. And for those of you, like if this is new to you, if you are a registered dietitian, so we have about 188 coaches that teach the Diet Free Life methodology right now, like around the world. which is not a lot. Our goal is, I would love to see that at 500 and 1,000. But we have 3 registered dietitians at this very moment. And all of those registered dietitians love what we do because it was not taught in their formal education. They were educated or indoctrinated to teach nutrition based on the food pyramid. So that's important to know. Like, that's why, like, I like to remind you and other coaches, when you meet someone who says they're a registered dietitian and they get all like feeling good about themselves, and I respect the fact that they spent 5-6 years of school, but they didn't learn how to help people at the kitchen table. They learn how to regurgitate what they're taught when it comes to institutionalized nutrition.
Yeah.
Which is really sad. And they're stuck there. And so the ones that I've worked with, like, and that are teaching the Diet for Your Life methodology, they just feel a sense of relief because this actually makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Your thoughts, you want me to keep it moving, or you want to share something else before we...
No, keep it moving. Let's see.
Okay.
One of the ways big food spreads its lies and propaganda is through the mainstream media.
Oat milk.
Oat milk.
Oat milk. This is oat milk.
And if you want to easily be able to cut through all the lies and get to the truth, then you gotta check out Ground News. It is the simplest way to get your news without being influenced by big media. On its website and app, you get a quick visual breakdown of the news outlets covering a story, alongside their ownership, general bias, and factuality. For example, recently, McDonald's laid off people, but depending on the headline you read, you would have come to a completely different conclusion. The Wall Street Journal's headline goes, McDonald's cuts pay packages for some employees, while the New York Post's headline reads, McDonald's lays off hundreds, cuts pay for workers, closes field offices. But thanks to Ground News, we got to easily see the whole picture. You can also see how reliable the news outlets reporting on a story are with their factuality score. And who's actually pushing the story. Are independent news outlets pushing it, or giant media conglomerates? If you're a fan of this channel, you're gonna love Ground News. And for a limited time, they're giving you 30% off their Vantage plan when you go to ground.news/evilfood. That's 30% off for going to ground.news/evilfood with the link below. Thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. During the 70s, pretty much every country around the world was in the midst of a giant grain shortage, and it was looking bleak. Soybean was down 7%. Canada's wheat production was at a 10-year low. Rice was down in Asia because of monsoons. But the biggest loser in all of this? The Soviets. Thanks to both bad weather and bad central planning, the Soviet Union was in dire straits. And if the Soviets didn't get their hands on some grain, there was going to be mass starvation and civil unrest. So the Russian government had no choice but to go to the Americans and beg them for help. And because the US just couldn't say no to a massive grain purchase, America agreed. America sold them the grain. And because there was a worldwide shortage of grains during that time, grain prices were very high, which made this an insanely lucrative deal for America. In fact, it would go down as one of the biggest grain trades in history. And this profitable ordeal got a man named Earl Rusty Butz thinking. Earl Butz is a very important man in this story. He was the Secretary of Agriculture at the time under President Richard Nixon. And at the time, Nixon was up for re-election. And when you're in a powerful position like the Secretary of Agriculture, you obviously want to stay in power. So Earl Butz needed to do everything in his power to guarantee Nixon won re-election. So Butz concocted a plan. One of the most powerful political bases you can get on your side as a politician are the nation's farmers, the people that grow the nation's wheat, soybeans, and corn. He knew that if he could earn the support of the farmers, the presidency would be in the bag. And as the Secretary of Agriculture, Butz was in the perfect position to make them very, very happy. At the time, the grain market in America was actually pretty regulated. There were production limits and very strict policies that had been in place since the Depression. So Earl Butz used his position as the Secretary of Agriculture to deregulate the grain market. No more production limits. Farmers could grow as much as they want. On top of that, to let the farmers make even more money, he subsidized grain sales to Russia. In other words, farmers got free money from the government every time they sold grain to the Soviet Union. On top of that, Butz believed that the bigger the farm, the more productive it was. So he pushed farmers to consolidate. Small, humble family farms? No! Earl Butz's slogan was, get big or get out, and adapt or die. Butz didn't want farmers. No, he wanted agribusinessmen. And that's exactly what he got. Now, the agribusinessmen of America were even more powerful than before. They were pumping out more grain than ever before. They were swimming in more cash than ever before. And they were definitely rallying behind Nixon more than ever before. And it worked. Nixon would go on to spend another 2 years in office, and Earl Butz for another 4 years. But then, the world no longer had a grain shortage. While at the same time, America was growing way more corn, soy, and wheat than ever before. The Soviets didn't need that much grain anymore. So now, all those artificial profits the farmers were making were at stake. We can't have that now, can we? So what are we to do with all this extra grain?
That's a great question. Great time to pause. What are we to do with all this extra grain? And I hope everyone's watching this to better understand that politics plays a huge role in how certain foods are recommended to you. And when I say institutionalized food, whatever is recommended based on the dietary guidelines, if you find yourself in an assisted living facility, and I have clients that I work with before they went to assisted living, and I have clients that are now living in assisted living. They're paying a ton of money, and yes, they can cook their own food. They have their own individual rooms. They can also go out to eat on their own. But when you're on a fixed income, and it's a fixed income, you don't want to just go out to eat every day, because your lunch, your dinner, they're paid for. It's part of what you're paying. So you're going to eat the food that they're making available, which are all dictated by exactly what you're saying here as far as institutionalized food. If you find yourself in prison, God forbid, that's institutionalized food. So if they're going to be pushing seed oils and all the things that we know aren't helpful, if you're there, that's what you're going to get. If you're in a hospital, for any of you guys who have been in a hospital, they are regulated to provide you with institutionalized food. That's why people, when they're in the hospital, they go, oh, the food is horrible. I hate the food in the hospital. If you're in college, if your kids are in school, that's institutionalized food. They all are bound to provide food that fits with whatever the dietary guidelines are. If people can get that, Lisa, that says a whole bunch of why we're in the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
Because it even goes further. When you go to the store and you look at all the foods on the shelves, the foods that are there they design those foods to meet with the U.S. dietary guidelines. So even though you're buying food there, is not designed to give you food that's based on what you believe would be helpful. It's based on, they create foods based on what the government says the guidelines should be. And whenever you look at a product that says heart healthy, then the government has handed that over to the American Heart Association to tell you what would make it heart healthy. So if they say it has to have only this much saturated fat, and it has to have this much dietary fiber, it has to have this little added sugar, whatever those guidelines are, which is institutionalized, companies will create the serving size and create the food to fit those guidelines so they can market it the way they market it. And most people don't know all of that. So when you don't think that the U.S. dietary guidelines are playing a role in the foods that we eat, well, you better wake up, because they do.
I was just looking at the American Heart Association. It says, eat an overall healthy dietary pattern that emphasizes whole grains and products made up mostly of whole grains. And then it goes into the healthy sources of protein and plants and non-fat dairy.
Unbelievable.
Mm.
Unbelievable. And the hypocrisy around this is crazy, right? So if you look at whole milk, which when I was a kid, up until maybe, I don't know, I guess early teens, if that, we only drank whole milk. And I remember coming home and my mom had bought low fat milk. So this must have been around 1978, 1980. And I remember like pouring a glass of the low fat milk, or 2%, whatever it was. And I drank it. I was like, what the hell is this? Because I always used to whole milk.
See, I like that.
You like what?
I remember when my milk got switched out from the whole milk to the 2%. And I mean, I never liked dairy as a kid. I did not like milk. I would be the one sitting at the dinner table like forever trying to finish my food or, drink that milk. And then when there was like the 2%, it wasn't as thick. I think I just didn't like the consistency of the milk. So
you didn't like the whole milk?
I didn't like any milk, but if I had to drink it, I would rather the lighter milk, which was like the 2%.
Okay, and I get it. I totally get that. And I remember leaving whole milk out. But here's two things to know about whole milk compared to all the other milks. People who drink whole milk are significantly leaner than people who drink alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've done many randomized studies, epidemiology like studies, where if you drink whole milk, you're less likely to be overweight compared to if you drink 2%, 1% non-fat. The other thing is when you look at the insulin response of milk, whole milk compared to non-fat milk secretes 300% more insulin compared to whole milk. Think about that.
Wow.
So then it goes back to what we're constantly preaching, that the further away from nature something is, the more insulin you're going to get secreted.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if it's 2%, 1% non-fat milk, you're getting way more insulin being secreted compared to whole milk. Now, it gets really weird when you start looking at who really would benefit from not drinking milk. I know African Americans, over 70% of every Black person you meet is lactose intolerant. So if there's 10 Black people in the room, 7 of those people will not benefit from drinking milk.
Yeah, that was me. That's why I
But
didn't
they drink it anyway.
Ugh.
Right? And if you look at Caucasians, it's about 50%. Right? So we drink it, and there's a lot of people in Iowa right now and Indiana that are going, I was with you guys until now because I drink my whole milk. I'm not saying don't drink your whole milk. I'm just saying that the data is what it is. And my whole thing is the government got involved and they started shifting things around. And that's why we drink and eat what we eat. But the people who are drinking something closer to nature or eating foods that are closer to nature, they don't have the same problems as people who are drinking alternatives and eating these things that are far from nature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like who ate ground beef, ground chicken? I mean, people didn't even really start eating chicken until the 60s. Chickens were like for having eggs. We ate eggs, and they would eat a chicken when it wasn't producing anymore, or maybe a special occasion came up. But we weren't eating a lot of chicken, and we definitely weren't eating a lot of turkey.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So today we eat way more chicken and turkey than we ever have. In 1900, no one was, hey, we're going to make some chicken tonight. That was not part of the conversation. We were eating more pork, more beef, and we didn't eat ground beef. Like if you go on Google, when did they come out with ground beef?
Let me look.
That came before ground turkey.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you see what I mean? Like that's all part of the Industrial Revolution. Whereas if you ate a steak, we know that if you eat a steak has never been deconstructed. It's still in its same original state from when they cut that cow. But when you do ground, that could be scraps of a whole bunch of different parts of that cow and then put together to make a patty.
Let's see.
So
Different ththings on that. Genghis Khan in the 12th century. It's disputed though about that, but I am seeing like minced beef beginning in the 15th century. Minced beef was a valued delicacy throughout Europe. But then let's see the history here of
minced beef. So would minced beef be ground beef?
No, I guess not. But I think that's just like where it started. Let's see.
Right, because you had to create technology. You had to have a way to ground something. I mean, it's not like they're going to get a knife during that time and to cut it up into ground beef.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like the advancement with machinery put us in a position where you could ground beef and ground turkey.
Yeah, so the term hamburger, right? So that's ground beef, derives from the name of the city of Hamburg in Germany, known for exporting high quality beef. It first showed up in print in 1834 in America on the menu at New York's Delmonico restaurant, where the chopped and formed hamburger steak was a prominent item. In the late 19th century, Dr. James Henry Salisbury used chopped beef patties to cure Civil War soldiers suffering from camp diarrhea. Dr. Salisbury advocated eating cooked beef 3 times a day for a healthy constitution. The term Salisbury steak appeared in print in 1897, and the seasoned and broiled patty is considered a forerunner in the modern hamburger. Then came the bun. So
and the bun didn't come for a while, right? Because
yeah,
I
it
know
says
that
the story behind the introduction of a bun isn't quite as clear. Brothers Charles and Frank Menchie's claimed credit for its creation when they ran out of pork sausages at the Erie County Fair in 1885 and substituted beef in their sandwiches. Enthusiasm for favorites really took off. Let's see. Enthusiasm for America's favorite sandwich really took off at the 1904 St. Louis World Fair. And then in 1912, the hamburger reputation as ground beef. So it was like 1912 when like ground beef, it looks like really kind of started here in America.
Okay, so in your short research right there, that's relative. I mean, that's a little over 100 years ago, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Same as chicken. Like a lot of what we're eating today was never part. It's kind of like salad dressings, right? I have a recipe book that's dated 1895, and when they mention salads, there's no lettuce. There's only like vegetables, and they use like heavy cream, like whipped cream, like more like fat.
Yeah.
And you ate it with that. There was no salad dressings.
I
Right?
remember you telling me about that book. I want to see that book.
Actually, I'll forward it to you. I have a copy of it.
Mm.
And when you go through it, there's over 300 recipes in there, and we just ate real food.
Yeah.
Right? There was no salad dressings, and if like you could actually do a seminar and have a strong debate on this where you could say salad dressings today is one of the culprits for why people are overweight and have insulin resistance. And I say that because in 1900, there was no salad dressings.
Yeah, I mean, and now they're just filled with all of the seed oils too,
Right. Because the seed oils, Procter & Gamble came out with Crisco in 1911. Shortly after that, you started to see more and more of them. Margarine came about. Then soybean oil came about in 1965. And today, we consume more. The number one consumed edible oil today is soybean oil. Today.
Yeah, I have a client that she eats out a lot. Like she doesn't really have she's moving around a lot, so she's living at mostly hotels and stuff. And you know, she's very aware of like all of these seed oils. Like she'll always ask them like, what are you cooking my food in? She'll always ask for butter or olive oil as opposed to the seed oils, because she said it's in everything, and she notices it right away and how she feels and how she reacts to it when she has it. But she's always asking, like, if she's having a steak, what are you cooking that steak in? What are you cooking this in? And what's in that salad dressing? She's always asking because she doesn't have a choice. She can't cook much at home.
Oh,
And I
good for
give her
her.
props for doing that.
Good for her. It's funny. My daughter, my 16-year-old, she makes steaks. She like I'm not the guy that looks at every like the cost for everything. And so we go to Trader Joe's and I bought her. I said, "You want a steak, sweetheart?" I just bought it. I didn't look at the price. I'm not saying this is a good thing, everybody. I'm just telling you. So she gets, I get my little daughter a little steak, and she cooks it herself. Like she really likes to cook, and so it was like $19.
She picked herself a good steak at Trader Joe's.
Well, trust me, I got like a text message from her mom going, "I can't believe you bought our
She got the grass-fed organic."
And I asked her, I said, "So was it good?" She goes, "Oh, Daddy, it was great." And she only cooks she cooks them in butter. She don't even use oil, which I'm like so happy about that. But if you looked at the dietary guidelines, they would say, nope, that's the worst thing to cook your steak in is butter.
Right.
But anyways, you want to finish this thing?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, here we go. Let's go.
For a strong body and a bright future, serve your family Nabisco shredded wheat with improved wheat protein.
As one of these agribusinessmen at the time, with the global famine unfortunately waning off, you needed a way to convince the American public to eat way more grain than ever before. But one pesky little thing was getting in the way: meat. Americans were just eating too much of that disgusting meat that humans have been eating for hundreds of thousands of years. Meat that contains all the nutrients you could ever possibly need. So how are you going to convince the entire population to give up meat for a diet of white bread, pasta, and cereal? Well, conveniently, heart attacks were a nationwide epidemic at the time. In the 1970s, middle-aged men were starting to develop heart disease at rates never seen before in history. And cancer, which used to be pretty rare, was also becoming more and more common at the time. And instead of blaming these diseases on all the chemicals that got pumped into the air and water at the time, or the recent popularization of processed foods, you had the perfect culprit to blame heart disease and cancer on: meat and saturated fat. Saturated fats are the fats in red meat, eggs, and milk. Enter the diet heart hypothesis. The diet heart hypothesis was created by a physiologist named Ansel Keys, another important person in our little food journey. According to Keys, the reason why so many men were suddenly keeling over with heart attacks wasn't because of cigarettes or high-stress jobs or processed foods. It was the cholesterol in all that horrible saturated fat they were eating. Keys claimed cholesterol, saturated fats, and meat was literally transforming into a sticky cream of wheat-like plaque in the arteries of the heart. And apparently, the more of this plaque someone had in their arteries, the higher their risk of heart attack. But that was all a lie. Even though other studies came out showing that saturated fat isn't the biggest cause of arterial plaque, and that plaque is mostly made of calcium. The people still went wild for the diet heart hypothesis. Seriously, everyone was falling for it. Now, everyone thought that animal fats were just as bad as smoking cigarettes, and the agribusinessmen loved it. Big government and big agriculture had successfully duped the public into thinking that meat that humans have been eating for hundreds of thousands of years was now all of a sudden gonna kill you. But seed oils and grain-based processed foods? Nope, that's A-okay. Now, grain manufacturers could peddle their dirt-cheap grain-based products as miracle foods that could save lives.
Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young at heart? For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart.
A healthy life is a happy one. Make Mazola part of your healthy diet. Mazola is 100% pure corn oil, low in saturated fats with no cholesterol.
Okay. Let's just pause this for a brief second. Guys, everyone who's watching this is how it all started. They do commercials. If you're watching it, and I get it, your mom wanted to be healthier. You want to be healthier. We all want to be healthier. And the commercials are so convincing. The same as the commercials for Ozempic right now. And for Wegovy and Zepbound and all this. They're so convincing that you watch it. Your mind actually starts accepting that, okay, that must be good for me. So I hear what Robert and Lisa are saying, but for some reason I'm compelled now to go and buy that vegetable oil.
Yeah, it's the programming, it's the propaganda.
Wow, it's so sad.
Yeah, it's the fake news, right? I mean, it really is.
It really is. And I mean, you fast forward today with pharma, because for years they weren't allowed to advertise directly to customers, right? Consumers. But now they are. And so 70% of the money that Fox, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, all of these stations, the money that comes in, 70% of it, this is public record, is coming from pharma. So they control the narrative. And those companies, these people who are getting those big salaries, making $5 million a year, $10 million a year, they're not going to push back on that.
Yep.
They are not going to push back on that. So if pharma says we don't want you to have any programming that speaks negatively about our drugs, and if someone says, well, we're going to do it anyway because the people need to hear the truth, all right, we're pulling our money. We're not funding you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So people are compromised.
Oh.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Unbelievable. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and let's keep it moving. We're almost done, you guys.
Couldn't be further from the truth.
What is the effect of having a high vegetable oil diet? If you have a lot of corn oil and soybean oil, what happens? Well, in nearly a dozen of these studies, they found a number of worrisome things, including that in all the experimental groups, they died at higher rates of cancer.
The stage was set. You tricked the entire country into believing that saturated fat was the devil, and that grains will not only cure you of all diseases, but give you a long, healthy life. Now, you just need to make your new diet official.
Fun, but it's more than treats. Hey, look at mama, I watch what I eat. Give me 5 food groups. Give me grain group for energy. Fruits and veggies for vitamins, please. Meat group for strong bodies. Milk group for bones and teeth. Eat the others only sparingly. Give me 5 food groups. Give me 5.
In 1980, you released an official book of nutrition guidelines called The Dietary Goals of the United States. These guidelines stated that Americans should substitute starches for fat, choose lean meats over fatty cuts, limit intake of butter and other added fats, and limit the use of eggs and organ meat. Wow, how convenient. Don't eat fatty cuts of meat like ribeye, one of the most nutrient-dense foods in the world. Don't eat organs like beef liver that are even more dense in micronutrients. No, feed yourself and your children basically the equivalent of animal feed. And because of these new food rules, school cafeterias would have to serve more grains at lunchtime, including things like pizza and brownies to meet the grain requirement. And hospitals would have to give their patients 6 to 11 servings of grain per day, you know, to make them healthy and strong. Although not in the shape of a pyramid yet, this would be the foundation of the food pyramid we all know and love. And yes, when you first released these new guidelines, people definitely complained. Health professionals said that the guidelines were pure pseudoscience. And the meat industry did everything they could to get meat back into the picture. When you released these guidelines in pyramid form, the meat industry forced you to change their section from red to purple because they were afraid that the color red would scare people away from eating meat. And you gave them what they wanted to a degree. But you never shifted from grains and carbs being the bedrock of the American diet to this day. Plus, you couldn't take out grains even if you wanted to, because refined grain products like white flour, breakfast cereal, corn oil, and high fructose corn syrup are America's most lucrative foods. Take away Coca-Cola's precious corn syrup or Nabisco's white flour, and these companies will lobby you into the ground until you turn the tables back in their favor. You'll never be able to remove grains from the pyramid. But Americans shifting to grains led to one bad after effect.
If I'm gonna help my brain come to fruition, I'm gonna have to feed it quality nutrition. We love the cookies, but they're not sufficient. We need veggies to make our bodies efficient. Roll my chicken in a wrap, don't jam it in a nugget. Get hyped for healthy snacks, fresh food, we love it. Pretty good. Holla!
After years of successful grain pushing, you started to notice that your bulletproof diet was making Americans, well, fat.
So why is it that Americans keep getting fatter in spite of government efforts ranging from calorie posting to new school lunch programs?
Being overweight and obese is the second leading cause of preventable death in the US.
And the public was starting to notice. The food pyramid was losing its edge. It needed a rebranding. So in 2011, you switched gears.
Overweight and obesity rates are at dangerously high levels. The Obama administration has worked to support Americans who want to improve their health and nutrition. My plate is a departure in the food pyramid we're used to seeing. It's an easy to understand visual, which shows how to build a healthy meal based on the 2010 dietary guidelines for all of America.
You changed the food pyramid into a simple plate format and filled half of it with low-calorie fruits and vegetables while still keeping refined grains and seed oils as part of the recommended diet. Because if Americans ate more fruits and vegetables, they'll naturally consume less calories and will obviously become thin and cured from diseases, right? And sure, people might still be malnourished and slightly hungry all the time, but come on. You gotta solve this obesity epidemic before it really gets out of control. And this epidemic was all your fault in the first place. But the American public will never find out, especially when their brains are too weak from lack of nutrients. The new My Plate thing is slightly better than the food pyramid. It recommends less grain, but still recommends refined grain products like burger buns and pizza. And even to this day, grain manufacturers like General Mills are still doing whatever they can to sneak their obesity-inducing cereals into the dietary guidelines.
We found that 95% of that committee had a tie with the food or pharmaceutical industry. And over half of those members had more than 30 such ties. One member had 152 ties. And the most common ties were with General Mills and Kellogg's. Again, you see those names again.
So these big food conglomerates are stacking the deck inside the government, and they're paying for grants to study these unhealthy foods that then they say are healthy, and then they get recommended, and that's how these people make money.
So eat more meat. Don't be afraid of natural fats. Definitely be afraid of seed oils and processed foods. In fact, a good rule of thumb is to just eat the opposite of whatever big government and big food tells you to. And you want to know what they want you to eat next? Lab-grown meat. Ah, yes. The U.S. Department of Agriculture just approved lab-grown chicken to go on sale in the U.S., and it's coming to a restaurant near you. To grow lab-grown meat, they use immortalized cells, which is a fancy word for cancer cells and pre-cancer cells. Put those cells into a petri dish and slowly grow it from there. And yes, it's as disgusting and potentially dangerous as it sounds. You can bet that we're going to be making a video on it soon, so make sure you click that subscribe button.
Well, there you go. I told you that was a great video.
That is. You're gonna have to send that to me. I want.
I will say it's one to keep because they did a really good job, and they end with the lab grown meat, which we're aware that is happening. It's not going very well. They're trying to sell it, but the meat it does some weird stuff when people get it, and people are like, nope, I need to be, nope, I'm not eating it.
Yeah. You know, I have that plate that I don't. I used to. That plate where they the food pyramid plate.
Oh yeah, when Michelle Obama came out with.
When he came out with that, I was working in a pediatrician's office, and they had, you know, a whole thing of those plates that they were giving out, and he gave me one.
So keep in mind. So during that time, I was the lead nutritionist that started working with Let's Move, and I can tell you right now very clearly and openly and honestly, transparently, that when everyone who is part of that whole movement under Michelle Obama, when they saw Diet Free Life, they were very clear that Diet Free Life was the best thing they had seen. It made way more sense, but there was no way that we could have easily gotten it like converted or like put in. So there's a whole process to making that happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're muted, Robert.
Oh, well, I thought you were going to say something. So.
Oh. I thought you were saying something.
No, I was just saying, like, it's not that easy to get things through because even with Michelle Obama, when they came out with Let's Move or that whole My Plate, you had a lot of lobbyists that were fighting all of that. That wasn't something that they still had their hands on it, right? So like the General Mills and the Kellogg's of the world, they're paying millions and millions of dollars to buy certain politicians so certain things don't change. So yeah, you could change it from a pyramid to a plate, but you better make sure that our food is still being promoted and we're still part of the industrialized or the institutionalized process so that we are in assisted living homes, we're in prisons, we're in hospitals, we're in the cafeterias. So none of that changed.
Yeah.
Like none of it.
Mm-mm.
And we're still in it. And every year we're fatter. Every year we're sicker.
I know, you know, it like blows me, like, because now we're coming up to like, you know, the spring and the summer, you know, and it always, when I look around, like, you know, during the summer and I see, you know, all of the kids with the, you know, the continuous glucose monitors or the insulin pumps, you know, men, women, children, it blows my mind how many people, you know, are walking around, like that. It's just sad, you know, like it's sad what we've come to. And it's sad that, you know, it just the lies, the propaganda, all of that, you know, what the media, what these lobbyists, like what they've done to the people, because it doesn't have to be that way.
It does not have to be that way. So that's why I mean, we keep saying the same thing. People learn. Don't let the government tell you. I mean, but you can see, right? So if you went back to like COVID, they said, hey, do this. Let's say it was go to the left. Everybody, a lot of people went to the left. Then we like, wait a minute, that wasn't cool. That wasn't a good thing to do. Then they come out with, or they make it available for Ozempic and Wegovy. You get a whole bunch of people on, all right, go to the left. And a lot of people are jumping on those drugs.
Yeah.
So every time it's like we're not learning from whence we come.
I think we got to start. I think maybe we need to go start with the kids. I think we need to, like, you know, educate this generation of kids so they don't they don't fall into that. Kids pick it up a lot faster. They're,
And they do.
they're not as brainwashed,
They do, but they catch them early. Like Coca-Cola learned that years ago.
Yeah.
And now when you look at TikTok, if you go on TikTok and just really watch, you'll see people making all kind of different foods. It looks great. And they're indoctrinating kids to buy certain foods. I mean, I see it. I'm experiencing with my own 2 daughters. They'll say, "Hey, Daddy, can we go buy this?" I go, "What are you doing? What are you making?" "Oh, I saw it on TikTok." It's like all these things on TikTok. And at least my kids are aware that sugar is not their best friend. They hear me talk about seed oils all the time. They're like, "Well, what do you think about this, Daddy?" And then they get to hear me talk to clients, right? So I'll be driving in the car and I'll have a client on speaker, and my kids are sitting there and they can hear it. So it's not just me. They're hearing me talk to people who are saying, "Man, I'm so happy. Man, my weight is down. Man, I'm off of this medication. Man, I'm off of that." So they get to hear it. So, and I'm doing that on purpose because I'm also indoctrinating them. You know what I mean? I want them to hear what other people are experiencing so that it gives more validation to what I'm trying to teach them.
Right.
So anyway, that was the end of it. So do you want to jump to, I mean, we went over an hour. We don't got to go to Telegram, but we can go there for 10 minutes and say hi to everybody.
Yeah, we could say hi.
All right, you guys. So thank you guys, everybody who listened in. And we're going to go to Telegram. Lisa Marie will give you the word. And if you came in late, go back and just watch the whole thing because that was I feel like that was a good show. And we share some things to help you understand why so many people think the way they think. They have just been indoctrinated.
Yep. All right. So join us over on Telegram. The link is below, and you just join the channel, and then click that join button up at the top on the right-hand corner, and finish the conversation with us.
Yeah. So come on over there, Cindy and Sandy, and
Colleen
let's
girl.
talk, Marilyn. Let's talk crap. All right. We'll see you guys
I'll
over
be
there.
there.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.